The other two videos in this unit focus on the laws of supply and demand as they relate to the entire market. But the laws of supply and demand also apply at the firm level. So in this video, we're zeroing in on the firm level and we're trying to understand how the laws of supply and demand help us make better choices at the organizational level. So if I'm trying to decide how many things I should produce, that is going to be a function of demand, but it's also a function of supply. How much do things cost me, and how much profit can I make off of each additional thing that I produce and sell? And so in this video, we're going to dive into an example that looks at a production of cakes. And we're going to look at what the demand is for those cakes at different price levels. We're going to look at the fixed and variable costs of making those cakes at each quantity, and then we're going to try to maximize our profits through this and decide just how many cakes we should produce and make and put to the market in order to maximize our profits. So here's our example.
Sarah owns a bakery that produces custom wedding cakes. She faces fixed costs, meaning that they don't change, for renting space and equipment, which amount to $1,000 per month. However, her variable costs change with the number of cakes produced. The breakdown of her variable costs per cake is as follows. The ingredients are $15 per cake. Let's say that the electricity to make each of these cakes is $5 per cake. And then labor per cake starts at $20 for the first 5 cakes, but it increases by 10 for each cake after the 5th cake due to the need for additional workers and her overtime costs. She's going to have to keep paying for more labor after the 5th cake. And then Sarah has also estimated a demand schedule for the prices that she could charge for her cakes. And we'll look at that here in a second. Okay, so let's put some of this information into a table here. So we want to look at maybe between 1 to 10 cakes. And we want to see what the cost of making those cakes given the information that we've received here. So the ingredient cost we saw was a constant variable cost. Okay, so it's $15 per cake. Okay, so in this case, what we want to do is we want to say equals $15 times the amount of cakes that she produces. Okay, so the ingredient cost in this case would be 15, and as we move down, you can see kind of the cost of ingredients. If she were to make 10 cakes, it'd be $150. Okay. The same for electricity. It's constant at $5 per cake. So we want equals 5 times 1. Or we'll link the cell here so that we can drag it down. Okay, and we'll drag that down. Now we have how much it costs in electricity per cake. Okay, now labor costs are going to be a little bit trickier. So for the first 5 cakes, it's only going to be $20 because she could probably make them herself. But the moment that she gets past the 5th one into 6, she has to either pay for additional labor or overtime, and so that cost is going to start increasing. Okay, so for the first 5, we're going to say equals $20 times, times the number of cakes produced, and we do that for the first 5 cakes. Okay, now the next part gets a little sticky because we want to include the $100 for the first 5 cakes, but then for that 6th cake, it's actually going to cost her $10 more. So it's going to cost her $30. And for each cake that she makes from here on out, it's going to cost $30 instead of $20. So we're gonna keep this $100 that we've calculated here for the 5 cakes, and then we want to add on this. So this minus 5, right? So we're saying I want whatever this minus 5, the first 5 cakes, times $30. And so in this case, it's going to say we want the $100 for the first 5 cakes, and then we want $30 times the 1 additional cake that we're making on top of 5. Okay, so in this case, it's $130. Now, as I drag that down, Now it's $160. We're adding $30 for that next cake, and we'll drag that. Each one of these should be 30, 30, 30. Okay, good. So now we can see that price of those cakes there increasing. The next step is we want to start to add all of this up. So what are the total variable costs? So that's simple here. We're just going to add up. We're going to do sum up each of the variable costs here. And we're going to drag that down. So we can see that the variable costs are increasing along with the quantity. If you produce more, it's going to cost more. Okay. And then we are also told in the problem that the fixed cost was about $1,000 a month, and that stays constant. That doesn't matter however much she produces, it's always going to be $1,000 per month. Okay, so now we have our total variable costs, we have our total fixed costs. Now we can add these together for just our total cost. So we'll sum these together, and we get our total cost according to the quantity that we produce. Okay, so now that we know quantity that or the cost of producing between 1 to 10 cakes, we also want to look at a demand schedule to say, okay, well, depending on how many cakes I sell, there might be demand given whatever price that I charge. So in this case, maybe if I charged $800 for some of these specialty cakes, I could only get one person who would want it. Or maybe if I only charged $350, I could sell 10 cakes at that price. And so what we want to do now is we want to compare the revenue that we would receive if we were to sell at each of these prices, and we're going to compare that to the total cost that we just calculated, and we're going to see if we can maximize our profits here and determine how many cakes we should make in a given month that would maximize our profits. So the first thing we should do is we should copy over this total cost column. Let's copy this over to this other tab so we have it here. Oh, we're going to want to paste values here since it has formulas in there. Okay, so now we have our total costs. Now we can calculate our total revenue. Revenue is a function of the price and the quantity. So we're just going to take the price and multiply it by the quantity, and that's going to tell us our total revenue. Okay, so this is the revenue that we'd receive if we were to sell each of these quantities at that given price. Now, it may be tempting to look at this and say, well, as I come down here, 3,600 is the highest revenue. That seems like we should be producing 8 or 9. Now, it's tempting, but revenue is not the same as profit. Remember, revenue is just how much money is coming in. It doesn't account for the cost. What we want is to maximize our profit, meaning the total revenue minus the costs. Okay, so one way that we can do this in this situation, the easiest way to maximize our profits is the point at which our marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. What does marginal mean? Marginal just means the next thing. So marginal revenue means how much revenue do I get from producing the next good. Marginal cost means what's the cost of producing the next good. So I can't have a marginal revenue or marginal cost for the first good because there's nothing to compare it to, but I can start with the second good, meaning what would be the marginal cost of producing the second one relative to the first one? Well, this is easy. It's just the difference between the cost of producing the second good minus the cost of producing the first good. Okay, so this tells me that producing the second good comes with a marginal cost of $40. Okay, and if we drag this down all the way to the bottom, this tells me what the marginal cost of all of these is. Now you'll notice this is increasing because after 5, right, we have to charge $10 more for the cake. But this tells us for each of those quantities that we produce, this is what it costs to produce the next good. Now let's do the same for marginal revenue. So if I produce the second good, what would be the difference between the marginal or the revenue I get from producing the second good and the revenue I'd get from producing the first good? Okay, there's the revenue that we'd receive, and so we can drag this down. Okay, now what we see is that the marginal revenue, how much revenue we get from producing the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, is starting to decrease here, right? And there comes a point here where the marginal cost here exceeds the marginal revenue. Okay, so even though these both bring in 3,600 in revenue, in this case, if we were to produce this ninth good, it would cost us $50 and we wouldn't actually get any additional revenue from there. Okay, so this is the point. So we would say we'd maximize our revenue by producing 8 units. At that point, the marginal revenue still exceeds the marginal cost. We'd be making more if we were to produce this unit. If we produce the ninth unit, we'd actually be losing $50. Even though the revenue stays the same, we have to account for this additional cost, and that would not be profit maximizing for us.
Now, remember, we're going to go over in class all the different types of costs, all the different types of revenue, and how to calculate each of those. But what I want you to really remember is that profit maximizing quantity for a firm is always going to be where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. We want to produce up until the point where those two are equal. And once the marginal cost exceeds marginal revenue, we want to stop producing in order to maximize our profits.